My name is Sophia, and I was 25 when everything began, young, hopeful, and more nervous than I liked to admit. I had just started my new job in a mid-sized company, and for me, this felt like the first real step into adulthood. I still remember the excitement of walking into the office that morning, carrying a brand new handbag and wearing the neatest suit I owned. My heart beat so fast as I checked my reflection in the glass doors before stepping inside. The office atmosphere was buzzing with energy. People tapped on their keyboards, answered phones, or rushed down the hallways with files in their arms. I had been given a small cabin on the second floor, a space that wasn't luxurious, but it was mine. A desk, a chair, a filing cabinet, and a small window overlooking the parking lot. It felt like a symbol of independence, like I finally belonged somewhere. As I sat at my desk, arranging my papers and trying to focus, I caught myself daydreaming about what this job could mean for me. A chance to prove myself. A chance to grow. Maybe even a chance to make my family proud, to show them that their daughter wasn't just another girl who would get lost in the crowd. But beneath the surface of my excitement, I was nervous. I didn't know many people here, and though I smiled at colleagues as they passed, most seemed too busy to notice me. Still, I kept telling myself, this is just the beginning. Stay strong, Sophia. Hours slipped by, and I buried myself in work, determined to impress on my very first day. The hum of printers, the soft ring of phones, the chatter of coworkers in the corridor, it all blended into a kind of background music that made me feel oddly safe. That safety shattered in an instant. It started faintly, an acrid smell, like something burning. At first, I thought it was a machine overheating somewhere nearby. But then I heard the commotion, hurried footsteps, shouts echoing from the other side of the building, the unmistakable sound of fear. I stood up, my chest tightening, and peered out of my cabin window. Smoke. Dark, curling, menacing smoke seeped into the hallway. My heart dropped. Someone shouted, "Fire! Get out, everyone, get out!" The office turned into chaos. People ran past my door, their faces pale, their arms clutching bags and files as though they had seconds to save their lives. The air grew hotter, heavier, filled with the choking scent of burning wires and wood. I rushed to open my door, but to my horror, it jammed. I pulled at the handle, twisted, slammed my shoulder against it, but it wouldn't budge. Panic clawed its way up my throat. "Help!" I screamed, banging against the door with my fists. "Please, I'm stuck in here." No one stopped. I saw silhouettes darting past through the narrow glass pane on the door, too frantic to notice me. My voice grew hoarse as I shouted again, but the noise of the fire alarm drowned me out. Smoke began seeping into my cabin through the cracks. I coughed, pressing my sleeve against my mouth. My eyes watered, blurring the room around me. The once safe space, the desk, the files, the neat little chair, suddenly felt like a trap, a prison I couldn't escape. I stumbled back, my knees weak. My chest heaved as the realization hit me, they had all left me behind. One by one, everyone had saved themselves, and I was forgotten, locked in this cabin, waiting for the fire to claim me. Tears stung my eyes as heat pressed against the door. My mind raced with desperate thoughts. Is this it? Is this how it ends, on my very first job, in a place where no one even knew me well enough to care? I tried again to scream, louder this time, slamming my fists until they ached. My lungs burned as smoke filled the air. My head grew light. I dropped to the floor, crawling under the desk, hoping the air would be cleaner closer to the ground. My body trembled uncontrollably, every muscle aching from fear and lack of oxygen. For a fleeting moment, I thought about my family. My mother's smile. My father's quiet pride. All the dreams I had carried into this building that morning now felt like ashes slipping through my fingers. I whispered, almost to myself, "Please, somebody, help me." The roar of flames grew louder. The ceiling above creaked like it might collapse. My eyelids grew heavy. I pressed my forehead against my arm, trying to keep myself awake, but darkness clawed at the edges of my vision. And in that moment, when I thought hope was gone, a strange calm washed over me. A fragile thread of faith, like maybe, just maybe, a miracle would come before the fire consumed me. The smoke was getting thicker now. It curled around me like a suffocating blanket, black and bitter in my lungs. I pressed the sleeve of my blouse against my mouth, but it barely helped. My chest heaved with each breath, and my head spun like the room itself was tilting. The once faint alarm now wailed mercilessly, drilling into my skull, reminding me with every shriek that time was running out. My hands shook as I fumbled for anything that might help me break the door open. I tried slamming the edge of a chair against it, but the flames on the other side seemed to mock my efforts. Heat licked through the thin cracks, and I dropped the chair, coughing violently. My body was weakening, every gasp more painful than the last. Please, my voice was a whisper now, weak and defeated. My vision blurred as tears mixed with smoke stung my eyes. I sank to the floor again, trembling. For the first time, I felt myself letting go, surrendering to the inevitability that no one was coming. I thought about how cruel it was that I would die here alone on the very first day of my job. My heartbeat slowed, thudding dully in my ears. I closed my eyes, ready to give in to the darkness creeping over me. And then, the door exploded open with a force that jolted me back to life. Splinters flew across the room as if the fire itself had been torn apart. Through the thick smoke, a figure emerged, tall, powerful, determined. For a moment, I thought I was hallucinating, but then I saw the reflective stripes on her uniform, the helmet shining faintly in the dim glow of flames. A firefighter. She strode inside like she owned the fire, like nothing could touch her. The air around her seemed to part, as if even the smoke feared her presence. My breath caught, not just in relief, but in awe. She was real. She was here. "Stay with me," she shouted through the muffled sound of her mask. Her voice was firm, commanding, yet there was something oddly soothing in it, like a hand reaching into my despair. I wanted to answer, but all that came out was a choked cough. My body slumped sideways, too weak to move. That didn't matter, because in the next instant, she was kneeling beside me. Strong gloved hands wrapped around me, pulling me close. Her grip was steady, grounding me in the middle of chaos. She lifted me as though I weighed nothing, draping me effortlessly across her shoulder. My cheek pressed against the rough fabric of her jacket, and for the first time since the fire began, I felt safe. The world outside my cabin was an inferno. Flames snarled along the walls, smoke billowed thick and merciless, and the air crackled with the sound of destruction. Yet she moved through it with unshakable strength, each step deliberate and fearless. I clung to her, my fingers instinctively curling into the material of her jacket, afraid to let go. The heat was unbearable, searing against my exposed skin. I could hear the roar of collapsing beams, the hiss of fire devouring everything in its path. And yet, through all of it, her heartbeat, steady against my ear, became my anchor. It was a rhythm of life in the middle of death. I tried to lift my head to see her face, but smoke blurred everything. Still, I caught glimpses, her strong jawline beneath the edge of her helmet, strands of hair escaping from under it, the determination burning in her eyes even brighter than the fire around us. Something inside me stirred. It wasn't just gratitude or relief, it was something deeper, something unexplainable. We burst through a cloud of smoke, and suddenly, cooler air kissed my skin. My lungs seized, then gasped, as I inhaled something other than poison. My rescuer didn't stop until we were completely outside, far enough from the flames to breathe freely. She gently lowered me to the ground, her hands steadying me as my knees threatened to give way. The world outside felt almost surreal compared to the nightmare I'd just been trapped in. Sirens wailed in the distance, people shouted, hoses sprayed torrents of water toward the building, and thick smoke curled up into the sky like a black storm. But in that moment, all I saw was her. She pulled off her helmet, and for the first time, I saw her face clearly. She was breathtaking. Her skin glistened faintly with sweat, her dark hair clung to her forehead, and her eyes, God, her eyes, were the most intense shade I had ever seen, alive with both strength and softness. There was a calm in them that silenced the chaos around me. "You're safe now," she said, her voice steady, low, and full of assurance. Those words hit me harder than the fire ever could. I realized I had been holding my breath even outside, and only then did I let it out. My whole body trembled, not from fear anymore, but from the overwhelming relief of being alive, of being seen, of being saved. I stared at her, unable to look away. My lips trembled, trying to form words, but nothing came out. All I could manage was a tear sliding down my cheek. Without hesitation, she brushed it away with the back of her glove, so tenderly, it nearly broke me. For a woman who had just carried me out of hell, she was unbelievably gentle. I wanted to say thank you, to tell her she was my miracle, but my throat was raw, my voice still choked. Instead, I simply reached for her hand, holding it like it was the only real thing in this world. Her grip tightened slightly in response, and in that silent moment, I felt it, the beginning of something I couldn't yet name. Something bigger than gratitude, something stronger than admiration. She saved my life, yes. But more than that, she had given me a reason to believe in miracles. When I opened my eyes again, the world was quiet. No smoke, no flames, no screaming sirens. Just a soft white ceiling above me and the faint hum of machines. For a moment, I panicked, thinking I was still trapped in some strange dream, but then I turned my head and saw the hospital curtain pulled halfway closed, the sterile smell of disinfectant surrounding me. And then I saw her. She was sitting right next to my bed, leaning slightly forward, her gloved hand replaced by bare skin now, warm, strong fingers wrapped gently around mine. Her eyes were closed, as if she'd been resting, but her grip on my hand was firm, like she hadn't let go since the moment she carried me out. I swallowed, my throat still raw, and whispered, "You stayed." Her eyes fluttered open instantly. Deep brown, glowing softly under the fluorescent lights. Relief washed over her face when she saw me awake, and she sat up straighter. "Of course I stayed. I had to make sure you were okay." Her voice was different without the helmet and the chaos, low, velvety, and calm, like it had been crafted to soothe. I blinked, trying to push away the dizziness still tugging at me. I thought I wasn't going to make it. She gave my hand a reassuring squeeze. "But you did. You're safe now." Tears prickled at the corners of my eyes. The word safe had never meant so much to me before. She reached with her free hand and brushed a few strands of hair from my face. Her fingers were surprisingly gentle, lingering for just a moment longer than necessary. "You had me worried in there," she said softly. I tried to smile, though my lips trembled. "You saved me." Her gaze met mine, steady and unwavering. "That's my job." But it felt like more than that this time. Her words made something inside me flutter, a tiny, fragile spark of warmth in the middle of all my exhaustion. She reached for the glass of water on the bedside table, holding it carefully to my lips so I didn't have to move. "Small sips," she instructed. "Your throat's probably burning from the smoke." I obeyed, and the cool water slid down, soothing the fire inside me. When I finished, she set the glass back down and adjusted my blanket, tucking it neatly around me as though I were something precious. I stared at her, trying to memorize every detail. The curve of her cheekbones, the way her hair fell loose now around her shoulders, the softness in her eyes that contrasted so deeply with the fierce determination I had seen in the fire. "What's your name?" I asked finally, realizing how absurd it was that I didn't even know it yet. She smiled, a slow, steady curve that made her look both strong and impossibly kind. "Isabella," she said. "But you can call me Bella if you like." "Bella," I repeated the name quietly, letting it linger on my tongue. It felt right, like a secret meant just for me. "I'm Sophia." "I know," she replied gently. I asked one of the nurses. I laughed softly, though it came out more like a weak chuckle. "So you've been, what?" "Sitting here watching me sleep." Her smile grew. "Guilty. I didn't want you to wake up alone." The simplicity of her words unraveled me. No one had ever said something like that to me before, not in that tone, not with that kind of sincerity. My chest tightened, not from fear this time, but from a strange, overwhelming gratitude. I squeezed her hand back. "Thank you, Bella. Not just for saving me from the fire, but for staying." Her eyes softened, and for a long moment, we just sat there in silence, hands entwined, our breathing the only sound between us. it didn't feel awkward. It felt inevitable. Like somehow, even though we had just met, we belonged in that space together. She tilted her head, studying me. You're stronger than you think, Sophia. You kept fighting in there even when you thought no one was coming. I shook my head, my throat tightening. I was terrified. I thought everyone had abandoned me. Her thumb brushed lightly across my knuckles. Not everyone. The warmth of her touch spread through me, calming the leftover tremors in my body. I leaned back against the pillows, but I couldn't take my eyes off her. Everything about her presence grounded me, her steady breathing, her protective posture, the way she seemed to hold the room together just by existing. Why do you do it? I asked quietly. Risk your life like that? She paused, looking down at our joined hands before answering. Because every life matters. And because sometimes you don't just save a life, you change it. Her gaze lifted back to mine, piercing yet tender. And sometimes it changes you too. Her words lingered in the air between us, heavy with unspoken meaning. My chest ached, but it wasn't the smoke this time. It was something else, something unfamiliar but beautiful. I wanted to tell her that she was already changing me, that she had already become more than just the woman who pulled me out of a fire. But I was too afraid the words would sound foolish too soon. So instead, I let my gratitude and admiration flow through my touch, tightening my hold on her hand. She seemed to understand. Her lips curved into that soft smile again, and she leaned forward, brushing a stray lock of hair away from my face with such tenderness that my heart skipped a beat. You should rest now, she whispered. I'll be here when you wake up. My eyes grew heavy again, but this time it wasn't fear dragging me down, it was peace. Safe, protected, cared for. For the first time in a very long time, I allowed myself to drift into sleep with a smile on my lips, knowing that when I opened my eyes again, she would still be there. And somewhere in the quiet corners of my heart, I already knew, Isabella wasn't just the woman who saved me from the fire. She was the woman who made me want to keep living. The days that followed felt like a blur of recovery and quiet discoveries. My body healed faster than I thought it would, but my heart and mind were slower to catch up. At night, flashes of fire haunted my dreams, the choking smoke, the locked door, the hopelessness, and I would wake drenched in sweat, gasping for air. But every time, there she was. Isabella. She kept her promise. She visited me every day, sometimes in her firefighter uniform after a long shift, sometimes in casual clothes that made her look almost ordinary, though she could never really be ordinary in my eyes. She always brought something with her, a smile, a story, or even small comforts like fresh fruit or a paperback novel she thought I might like. Once, she arrived with a simple bunch of daisies, their bright faces lighting up the sterile hospital room. For you, she said softly, setting them on the table beside my bed. I stared at the flowers, then at her. No one's ever brought me flowers before. Her brows lifted in surprise. Really? I shook my head, embarrassed by how small my voice sounded. Well then, she said firmly, taking my hand in hers, let this be the first of many. The warmth of her touch lingered long after she sat back down, and I couldn't stop myself from smiling like a fool. We talked for hours during those visits. I told her about my new job, how much it meant to me to finally have something of my own, how I had felt invisible most of my life, always too quiet, too cautious, too forgettable. She listened with the patience of someone who truly cared, never interrupting, her eyes locked on mine as if every word I spoke was worth keeping. In return, she shared pieces of her world. Stories of the firehouse, of rescues that had gone well and ones that had nearly broken her, of the exhaustion that came with her work, but also the fierce pride she carried in saving lives. She spoke with such passion that I found myself hanging on every detail, imagining her in those moments of bravery. Don't you ever get scared? I asked once, my voice tentative. She leaned back, considering. Of course I do. Fear keeps me alert. But I don't let it stop me. You learn how to breathe through it, how to push forward anyway. Her words struck me deeply, echoing in places I hadn't realized were still hurting. I admitted to her one night how the fire still lived inside my chest, how even the faintest whiff of smoke made me feel like I was back in that cabin, trapped again. Without hesitation, she moved to my side, kneeling next to my chair. "Look at me," she said gently. I did. "Breathe with me." She guided me slowly, inhaling deep, holding it, releasing. Her hand rested lightly on my shoulder, grounding me. Her eyes never left mine. Each breath I took with her steadied me, pulled me back from the edge. By the time we finished, my heart wasn't racing anymore. "You're not alone," she whispered. The words sank deep into me, warmer than any blanket. Something shifted between us after that. It was subtle at first, a longer glance, a softer smile, the way her hand would brush mine just slightly when she adjusted my blanket or passed me a glass of water. I began to notice the little things about her, the crinkle at the corner of her eyes when she laughed, the strength in her hands, the kindness that seemed to radiate from her even when she was quiet. One evening, when the hospital felt too quiet and lonely, she arrived with another bouquet, this time roses, a deep, romantic red. My chest tightened at the sight of them, at the thought that she had chosen something so intimate. "They reminded me of you," she said simply, setting them down. I laughed nervously, my fingers brushing against hers as I reached for the flowers. The touch was brief, but neither of us pulled away immediately. Our eyes met, and for a heartbeat too long, the world seemed to pause. That night, as she sat by my bed, the silence between us felt different. Not empty, not awkward, but full. Full of everything we weren't saying yet. "Bella," I whispered, testing the nickname again. Her lips curved. "Yes. Why are you doing all this for me? You could have just saved me and moved on." She tilted her head, her gaze softening. "Because I didn't want to move on. Because something about you," she trailed off, searching for words. "Something about you stayed with me after that fire." My heart pounded so loud I was sure she could hear it. I wanted to tell her I felt the same, that from the moment I saw her face outside the flames, I knew she was more than just a rescuer to me. But the words tangled on my tongue, too big, too soon. Instead, I reached for her hand. This time, I didn't let go. She squeezed back, her thumb stroking over my skin in the gentlest way. The warmth of her touch spread through me, chasing away shadows I didn't even know I carried. The room was so quiet, so intimate, that I almost didn't realize how close she had leaned until I could feel her breath against my cheek. My pulse raced. Her eyes searched mine, asking without words. I nodded, the tiniest movement, but it was enough. And then, slowly, so slowly, her lips brushed against mine. It was a kiss so gentle it felt like a question, a test, a fragile thread tying us together. My breath caught, my heart soared, and before I knew it, I was kissing her back. Tentative at first, then deeper, more certain. Her hand came up to cradle my face, and the world disappeared. When we finally pulled away, I was trembling, not from fear but from the intensity of what I felt. Her forehead rested against mine, and she whispered, almost shyly, "I've been wanting to do that since the moment I saw you safe." I laughed softly, my eyes still closed, my lips still tingling. "So have I." For the first time in my life, I didn't feel invisible. I felt seen, cherished, alive. I had always thought that love was something that just happened to other people. It wasn't that I didn't believe in it, it was just that my life had been too practical, too caught up in survival and responsibilities, to leave space for something as fragile as romance. But after the fire, after Isabella walked into my life like a guardian angel in uniform, I began to understand that love could arrive suddenly, like oxygen after suffocation. The days following the rescue stretched into weeks. My burns were minor, my lungs healing from the smoke, but emotionally I still carried the weight of that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I could still hear the crackle of flames and the screams of panicked voices. Yet, Isabella was always there, steady, patient, calm. Her presence became my medicine. One evening, she came to my apartment after her shift. I had cooked something simple, though I wasn't sure it tasted good. My hands had trembled too much while chopping vegetables. She didn't complain. Instead, she laughed softly, the kind of laugh that warmed every corner of the room. You're improving, she teased, taking a small bite of the slightly overcooked pasta. Maybe in a few weeks, you'll be feeding me like a queen. I chuckled, but deep inside I felt a quiet ache. No one had ever sat across from me with such tenderness, teasing me without malice, appreciating even my imperfect efforts. After dinner, we went for a walk. The streets were quieter than usual, the soft yellow of the street lamps brushing against her features. She carried herself with such ease, every step strong, every glance protective. And I found myself stealing looks at her, as though memorizing the lines of her face. Do you ever get scared? I asked suddenly, my voice uncertain. She tilted her head, considering. Of fires. Of anything, I clarified. Her eyes softened, and she nodded. Of losing people. Of not being there in time. Fear doesn't disappear just because you're trained to run into danger. But when you care, you fight anyway. Her words struck me deeply. I realized then that Isabella wasn't fearless, she was courageous. And maybe that's what I needed in my life. Not someone to erase my fears, but someone to hold me through them. That night, when she walked me back to my apartment door, I lingered. I didn't want her to leave. My heart thudded painfully, almost begging me to do something reckless, something honest. But instead, I only whispered, "Good night." She smiled, brushed her fingers against mine, barely a touch, and left. That fleeting contact stayed with me like a brand. A week later, I woke up in the middle of the night drenched in sweat. The fire was back in my dreams, suffocating me, choking me, dragging me back to that locked cabin. My chest tightened until I could hardly breathe. Without thinking, I reached for my phone and dialed her number. Isabella, my voice broke, trembling. I can't, please. She didn't ask questions. Within minutes, she was at my door, hair still damp from a late-night shower, dressed simply in a hoodie and jeans. She rushed to my side, gathered me in her arms, and held me like I was the most fragile thing in the world. "You're safe," she whispered into my hair. "Sophia, look at me. You're safe now. Nothing can hurt you here." Her hands stroked my back in slow, soothing circles. I buried my face against her chest, listening to the steady rhythm of her heartbeat, letting it anchor me. My tears soaked through her hoodie, but she didn't let go. When I finally calmed down, she pulled back just enough to look at me. Her thumb brushed away my tears, her gaze burning with a kind of intensity I'd never seen before. Then, so gently it felt like a question, she pressed her lips to my forehead. The kiss lingered, warm and grounding, sending shivers down my spine. In that moment, something inside me shifted. The fear that had wrapped itself around my heart began to unravel, replaced by something fiercer, something brighter. "Stay with me tonight," I whispered, barely audible. She nodded, no hesitation. And so she stayed. We talked until dawn, about small things and big things, about the lives we had lived and the lives we wanted to live. At some point, exhaustion pulled us into silence, and I fell asleep with her arm around me. For the first time since the fire, I slept peacefully. A few days later, Isabella invited me to her apartment. It was modest, but filled with warmth, books on the shelves, framed photos of her with her firefighting team, a small potted plant on the windowsill. She made tea, and we sat on her couch as twilight painted the sky in shades of purple and gold. The air between us was different now, charged, expectant. Every glance lingered, every brush of skin felt magnified. "Why me?" I asked suddenly, my voice trembling. She looked at me, puzzled. "What do you mean? You could have just saved me and moved on. But you stayed. You cared." She leaned closer, her eyes never leaving mine. "Because from the moment I carried you out of that fire, I knew I never wanted to let you go. Saving you wasn't just my duty, Sophia, it was personal. You became personal." My heart stopped, then started again in a rush of heat. Without thinking, I closed the distance. Our lips met, soft at first, hesitant, almost questioning. But then she deepened the kiss, her hand sliding gently to cradle my cheek. It was nothing like I had imagined. It wasn't just sparks, it was a flood. A release. Every fear, every doubt melted away as I kissed her back with all the gratitude and longing I had been carrying. When we finally pulled apart, breathless, my eyes filled with tears. I love you, I confessed, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. Her face broke into the most beautiful smile I had ever seen. She pulled me into her arms again, kissing me once more, deeper, fiercer, filled with promise. I love you too, she whispered against my lips. In that moment, love didn't feel fragile at all. It felt like strength. It felt like healing. It felt like forever. I had just begun to believe that my life with Isabella could be peaceful when the call came. Another fire. Another building in flames. The moment she received the alert on her radio, I felt my chest tighten. My mind instantly flashed back to the night she saved me, the choking smoke, the burning walls. Only this time, I wasn't the one in danger, she was. She noticed the panic rising in my eyes and reached for my hands. Sophia, she said softly, her voice calm but firm. Look at me. I looked up, tears already forming. I'll come back, she promised, pressing her forehead against mine. I swear to you, I'll come back safe. You have my heart now, I'm not leaving it behind. I wanted to believe her, but fear clawed at me. What if something happens? My voice cracked. Her lips brushed mine in a quick, steadying kiss. Then I'll fight harder, because I have something worth living for now. You. And then she was gone, rushing out with her gear, her team already waiting. I stood frozen at the doorway, watching the flashing lights disappear into the night. The hours that followed were unbearable. I paced the floor, sat down, stood up again, my thoughts a whirlwind of worst-case scenarios. Every siren in the distance made my heart stutter. My hands shook as I tried to call her phone, only to remind myself she couldn't answer. What if I lost her? What if the universe gave me this miracle of love only to tear it away again? By the time the door finally opened, I was trembling. And there she was, covered in soot, hair messy, her uniform smelling of smoke, but alive. Safe, Isabella. I cried, running into her arms before she could even set her helmet down. She wrapped me up instantly, holding me as though she never wanted to let go. I told you, she whispered into my ear, her voice hoarse but warm. I promised I'd come back. Tears streamed down my face as I clung to her. Don't ever scare me like that again, I sobbed, half laughing, half crying.